Today on The World Today. Global coronavirus death toll hits 1 million and exceeds it as the UN and the World Health Organization weigh in on the landmark number. Armenia claims one of its fighter jets was shot down by a Turkey jet, escalating ongoing conflict in the NagornoKarabakh region. Plus, we're hours away from the first presidential debate between US President Donald Trump and his Democratic challenger, Joe Biden. Glad you could join us, everyone. Welcome to the program. I'm Tenyola Shobowale. Today, global death toll from the coronavirus has exceeded the 1 million mark. The tally is provided by the Center at Johns Hopkins University, which also shows deaths in the United States, Brazil and India is responsible for nearly half the total. The number of deaths is now double the number of people who die annually from malaria, and the death rate has increased in recent weeks as infections surge in several countries. The number is worrying to the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who described it as mind-numbing.
Our world has reached an agonizing milestone, the loss of 1 million lives from the COVID-19 pandemic. It's a mind-numbing figure. Yet we must never lose sight of each and every individual life. They were fathers and mothers, wives and husbands, brothers and sisters, friends and colleagues. The pain has been multiplied by the savageness of this disease. Risks of infection kept families from bedsides, and the process of mourning and celebrating a life was often made impossible. How do you say goodbye without holding a hand, or extending a gentle kiss, a warm embrace, a final whispered, "I love you"? And still there is no end in sight to the spread of the virus, the loss of jobs, the disruption of education, the upheaval of our lives. We can overcome this challenge, but we must learn from the mistakes. Responsible leadership matters, science matters, cooperation matters, and misinformation kills. As the relentless hunt for a vaccine continues, a vaccine that must be available and affordable to all, let's do our part to save lives. Keeping physical distance, wearing a mask, washing hands. As we remember so many lives lost, let us never forget that our future rests on solidarity, as people united and as United Nations.
The World Health Organization, however, offers a glimmer of hope. Spokeswoman for the Global Health Agency, Margaret Harris, says while the 1 million deaths is a very sad milestone, the coronavirus is still suppressible.
Actually, my Director General, Dr. Tedros, has been speaking about this several times, but we were not specifically marking it. It is a very sad milestone, and it is, as the Secretary General said, every person is a parent or a child, a brother, a sister, a wife, or a husband. So many people have lost so many people and haven't had the chance to say goodbye because this horrible disease is so infectious that many of the people who died alone in medical circumstances where it's a terribly difficult and lonely death. It's not too late to turn this around. Never think so. The one positive thing about this virus is it is suppressible. It's not the flu. It doesn't just go and you can't do anything about it. You can, and many countries have shown that.
We'll have more on the COVID-19 update in a minute, but let's just take a look at other stories coming in from around the world. Fighting continues in the Nagorno-Karabakh region between Armenian and Azerbaijan forces. Now Armenia says one of its fighter jets was shot down by a Turkey jet in what could add fuel to the conflict going on in the region. According to the Armenian Foreign Ministry, the pilot of the Soviet-made Su-25 died after being hit by the Turkish F-16 in Armenian airspace. Turkey, which is backing Azerbaijan in the conflict, has denied the claim. We understand nearly 100 people have now died in the conflict, which was resurrected over the weekend. The mountainous enclave that is the region is officially part of Azerbaijan, but has been run by ethnic Armenians since 1994. Meanwhile, the UN Human Rights Office says it's deeply disturbed by the reported loss of civilian lives and the injuries, as well as damage to civilian property and infrastructure in the region. The message was expressed by the agency's spokesperson in a message released at the UN office.
We are concerned about the resumption of hostilities along the line of contact in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict zone and urge an immediate end to the fighting. We are deeply disturbed by the reported loss of civilian lives and injuries, as well as damage to civilian property and infrastructure. We call on all sides to respect international human rights law and humanitarian law. In particular, they need to ensure the protection of the civilian population and people placed hors de combat. And they need to prevent damage to essential civilian infrastructure.
In another development, French President Emmanuel Macron has visited French troops of the NATO-enhanced Forward Presence Battle Group in Rukla training grounds, which is part of deterrent against Russia. The visit happened on Monday, with Mr. Macron insisting Europe should cooperate with Russia to build peace in Europe, despite calls among European Union peers to review his stance towards Moscow after the poisoning of Alexei Navalny. Over the past year, the French president has tried to reduce distrust between Russia and the West, hoping to enlist Russian help in solving the world's most intractable crisis. But his efforts have upset other European Union governments, especially those in the East that escaped Moscow's orbit after the Cold War. Meanwhile, Britain has imposed sanctions on 8 senior Belarusian officials, including President Alexander Lukashenko, over what it views as a rigged election and violence against protesters. British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab says, as well as the Belarusian president, his national security advisor and chief of staff are also among these sanctioned officials. The country has been embroiled in a political crisis after its August presidential election was deemed by main opposition figures as rigged.
I think first and foremost, yes, today the UK government has imposed sanctions on 8 senior members of the authorities in Belarus, including Alexander Lukashenko, the National Security Advisor, and Lukashenko's Chief of Staff. And it's for the persecution of the protesters and the rigging of the elections in Belarus. We think it's really important to take a stand for human rights and for the values of freedom, and it's important to do so now. I think first and foremost there must be a cost, there must be a price with the kind of human rights abuses that we've seen and the fraudulent approach to that election, which is clear now from all of the independent reporting we've seen.
And back in the European Union, executives are snubbing a demand by Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban to dismiss its top rule of law official for comments made about the country's ailing democracy. The 57-year-old Orban has repeatedly clashed with the EU over his hardline stance on migration and minorities, as well as moves to increase state control of the courts, media, academics and NGOs. Critics in the EU, as well as international watchdogs, say he defends nation-states and ethnic majorities at the expense of fundamental human rights and democratic checks and balances.
Tomorrow, and we have seen the letter from Prime Minister Orban, and of course we will reply to it. President von der Leyen works closely with Vice President Jourova on the rule of law, and the Vice President has the President's full trust. Our concerns when it comes to the rule of law situation in Hungary are well known. They will be addressed in our rule of law report, which will be adopted tomorrow. In this report, we assess the situation, as you know, in all member states. And the report is meant to be an instrument for a dialogue with the member states, but also with the European Parliament on the aspects related to rule of law.
So the U.S. presidential race was still hours away from what will be the first time President Donald Trump and Democratic rival Joe Biden square off in a presidential debate. With more than 1 million Americans already casting early ballots and time running out to change minds or influence the small sliver of undecided votes, the stakes are enormous as the two White House candidates take the stage 5 weeks before the November the 3rd election. Trump and Biden will debate an array of urgent political challenges, including the coronavirus pandemic that has killed more than 200,000 people in the United States and thrown millions out of work, a brewing battle over Amy Coney Barrett's U.S. Supreme Court nomination, and continued protests across the country for racial justice. The latest point of contention surfaced on Sunday when the New York Times reported that President Trump paid just $750 in federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017, and none in 10 of the previous 15 years. Analysts say the encounter could be crucial for Biden, giving him a chance to prove he is a steady hand who is capable of stepping into the Oval Office and ending the tumult of Trump's first term. White House aides say the 74-year-old Trump will aggressively challenge Biden's record on issues such as trade, energy and taxes, and will be prepared to defend himself on his own taxes. President Trump, who has repeatedly cast doubt on the integrity of the election, is likely to face questions about his refusal to commit to accepting the election results should he lose. While 77-year-old Biden will outline where Trump has fallen short of his own promises, a source familiar with his strategy, that's according to a source familiar with his strategy, he also is certain to press his criticism to President Trump's response to the pandemic and highlight his efforts to eliminate the Affordable Care Act known as Obamacare. As you can see, a lot to keep our eyes on there. Our Washington, D.C. correspondent Maria Bird joins us now. Maria, big night. We're still hours away. Talk to us about what the debate will look like tonight as regards maintaining social distance and health regulations. That's, of course, because of the coronavirus.
Yes, you're exactly correct. It's a very big night. I think a night people have been waiting for months now. And as you said, there will be various social distancing protocols. There will also be COVID-19 tests for the approximate 70 guests that will be in attendance at the event this evening. This will be held in the Midwest. And as we know, the Midwest is always an area that many focus in on. It'll be held in Cincinnati, Ohio, at a university there. There will be social distancing measures for even the candidates. So they will be made sure to be apart. And even when they enter into the debate stage, they will be entering from separate entrances. So it is definitely going to follow the various COVID-19 protocols. But we know that it will also really highlight some of the main issues that have been running rampant through the U.S. over the past few months. We'll see issues such as race relations in America. We'll also hit on the response of the White House with COVID-19. They'll also discuss with the most recent news, as you've mentioned earlier, the tax bills that President Trump released yesterday with the New York Times article. So that's $750 that he paid and what that really means, and the over $400 million that's being potentially projected that he actually owed in taxes. And so those areas will be hit as well. We'll probably see a lot of conversation around the economy and what's going to happen next and their plans for the economy. And we know that the wildfires in California and a lot around the environment will also most likely be touched on. So it'll be a wide array of conversation and discussion. It'll be 15-minute segments. There'll be no commercial breaks. It'll be about a 90-minute overall debate. So it'll be very jam-packed in that 90 minutes.
All right, then, Maria, big night. We're all looking forward to it. I'm sure you'll be joining us tomorrow for all the highlights. Thanks once again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Stay with us on the program. Coming up, Kuwait's ruler, Emir Sheikh Sabah, dies at the age of 91. Thanks for staying with us. Kuwait's ruling Emir Sheikh Sabah Al-Hamad Al-Sabah has died. He was aged 91. Sheikh Sabah ruled Kuwait for more than 50 years. During his time, he had sought balanced relations with the Gulf nations' bigger neighbors, forging the closest ties with Saudi Arabia, rebuilding links with former occupier Iraq, and keeping open dialogue with Iran. He also tried to mediate in a Gulf dispute that saw Riyadh and its allies impose a boycott on Qatar. A succession is not suspected to affect oil policy or foreign investment strategy through the Kuwait Investment Authority, one of the world's biggest sovereign wealth funds, as oil policy is set by the country's Supreme Petroleum Council, which is appointed by the Emir. His designated successor is his brother, Crown Prince Sheikh Nawaf Al-Hamad Al-Sabah. Britain's Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle, has lost the latest skirmish in her privacy lawsuit against a tabloid newspaper. The ruling by London's High Court ruled that the paper could amend its case ahead of a trial next year. Meghan, wife of Queen Elizabeth's grandson, Prince Harry, is suing publisher Associated Newspapers over article The Mail on Sunday printed last year that included part of a handwritten letter she sent to her estranged father, Thomas Markle, in August 2018. Last week, the paper applied for permission to amend its case, arguing that the couple had cooperated with a biography about them, which was published in August, and that showed Meghan had intended some private details to become public, including the contents of the letter. The judge, Francisca Kay, said that while she made no view on the strength of the Mail's case, the amendment could not be said to be unarguable. Now, some sad news now. A 19-year-old woman in India has died weeks after authorities said she was raped by a group of men. The decision has triggered protests in New Delhi, with hundreds gathering at the hospital where her body lay. The young woman belonging to the Dalit community was attacked and raped on September 14 at a field near her home in the Katharas district, 100 kilometers from Delhi. Earlier today, her father asked for justice for his daughter as he stood alongside the protesters outside the hospital. Police have arrested 4 men in connection with the crime. Sadly, a woman is raped every 15 minutes in India. That's according to the 2018 government data released this year. Now, over in China, a court has sentenced a nursery teacher to death for poisoning 25 children. The court said the teacher, identified as Wang Yun, said she put sodium nitrate in the breakfast of her colleagues' students for revenge after a fallout. Sodium nitrate is often used as a food additive for curing meat, but can be toxic in high amounts. She was arrested last year after children at a kindergarten in Jiaozhou City were rushed to hospital after eating their morning porridge. The incident, which happened on March the 27th last year, shocked China and triggered global headlines. The court also says this was not the first time Mrs. Wang had poisoned people, referring an earlier incident where she bought nitrate online and poisoned her husband, who suffered minor injuries. Now, in other parts of the world, coronavirus cases have been rising. Russia is said to have the 4th highest case count in the world after the United States, India and Brazil, and health officials say the numbers continue to climb. The capital, Moscow, remains the worst affected city with more than 2,000 new cases. Meanwhile, more than 7,000 cases have been recorded in the UK in the last 24 hours, the highest number of daily cases since mass testing began. It has also recorded 71 more deaths, the highest daily total for months. Here's more on this and other developments on our COVID-19 Global Update.
As the COVID-19 virus has killed more than 1 million people around the globe, the US remains the country with both the most reported infections and the highest number of deaths. Brazil has the second highest number of recorded deaths, followed by India, Mexico, and the UK.
Of the United States, accompanied by the Vice President.
Under pressure over his handling of the coronavirus outbreak, U.S. President Donald Trump says that the government will distribute millions of rapid tests to states this week, with an eye towards using them to reopen schools.
Today, I'm pleased to report that we're announcing our plan to distribute 150 million Abbott rapid point-of-care tests in the coming weeks, very, very soon. This will be more than double the number of tests already performed.
President Trump is trying to show progress in the battle against the new coronavirus as he fights for re-election in his November 3rd matchup against Democrat Joe Biden. Meanwhile, scientists continue to work towards a vaccine, with 9 potential vaccines already in the final stage of testing. Although there are no vaccines proven to protect the body against the disease, there are around 40 different coronavirus vaccines in clinical trials, including one being developed by the University of Oxford that is already in an advanced stage of testing. Finally, Chile's capital, Santiago, has lifted almost all of its restrictions after 7 months of lockdown, making it one of the longest quarantines in the world. 8 communes of Santiago have reopened economic activities. However, Chile remains a nighttime curfew.
And now, pioneering jet suit companies adding superhuman power to the response of emergency services on Britain's mountains. UK-based Gravity Industries has been working with paramedics in the Rural Lake District to test its jet suit capabilities in emergency situations. In one test simulation, a 10-year-old girl had fallen from cliffs and sustained a serious leg injury. After receiving the coordinates of the casualty, a jet suit paramedic navigated over rocky hills and postcard scenery to successfully reach the girl in only 90 seconds. The paramedic could then assess her injuries and provide treatment at the scene. It would have taken 25 minutes for responders on foot to navigate the same terrain. That's according to the company. The power of the Gravity jet suit jet engine, teamed with the navigation of its human pilot, shaved vital minutes of this response time. That's incredible stuff. And that's the world today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shoboale.